Now, I don't think I've met anyone who loves waiting. I'm pretty sure we're all in the same boat here, whether that's waiting in traffic or at the grocery store, at the bank, or waiting for a bus or a train or a cab in the rain. Waiting to be able to be together again, right? To hug and shake hands, to have parties that aren't just virtual, to have community lunch without worrying about COVID. But there's also waiting of, family and friends for a loved one's test results. There's the waiting of a person stuck in a difficult or unfulfilling job or job search. Waiting of a couple for a child who still hasn't come. Waiting of a single person for a partner who still hasn't come. Waiting of a heart to heal after another disappointing relationship, or waiting for the pain of the past, or the change of the past to go away. Then there's the waiting for God's kingdom to come in all its fullness. For all of the things that make up your depths to no longer cause you heartache. For God's will to be done. For justice to roll down like a river, and righteousness like an ever-flowing stream, in the words of the prophet Amos. For the proud and mighty to be brought down, and the humble to be lifted up high, as Jesus' mother Mary sang. What did the psalmist mean to wait for the Lord? When we think of waiting, there's often a very passive quality to it, right? We're standing around, or we're sitting around doing nothing. We're bored. And so maybe you pull out your phone and pass the time, or whatever you do when you're waiting for something. But the Hebrew word for wait, it means to look for with eager expectation. That's what's going on here. When the psalmist says wait for the Lord, he's saying look for the Lord with eager expectation. We look for where God is at work, and we look forward with anticipation to what God has promised God will do. Our souls tuned in and ready. Our entire being focused on what God is about to do, and perhaps what God is doing already. Now, friends, we must remember that we are integrated beings. Our bodies, our minds, our emotions, our spirits, all of us are interconnected. Every part affects every other part. Yesterday, I ate something that really didn't agree with me. And so the whole rest of the day, I felt out of it and just unable to engage emotionally, spiritually, physically, anything. I was just out for the day. If you're spending 7+ hours looking at a screen, that affects you emotionally. Affects you relationally. If you're exhausted, it affects how you interact with people around you, the people that you come into contact with. And when we overload our brains with information, much of it tragic and much of it out of our control, it affects our spirituality. It focuses oftentimes, not that we shouldn't be aware of things, but when we get oversaturated with that, it focuses our energies on the depths, and rather than the God of the rescue. Rather than the God in whom we hope. And so what would it look like for you? What would it look like for you to engage your whole being, your soul, in waiting for the Lord, in looking expectantly, eagerly for the Lord? What needs to be pruned from your life, or removed from your life, or what boundaries need to be drawn so that you can be more present to the reality of God? Maybe it's limiting the amount of time you spend on social media. That's one for me, for sure. I can get so caught up in the news, and I just want to be up to date with what's happening here and what's happening back where I grew up in Hong Kong. But when I disconnect my reality from God's reality, from when I neglect the sitting still and the being with God and the contemplation and the meditation and the centering on God and God's truth and God's kingdom, it's so easy for me to be discouraged and hopeless. And this is where, if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, you should go back and check out Matthew's message from last week. There's a reason we started this series in Psalm 46, where God says, "Be still and know that I am God." Family, there will come a day when, in the words of the 14th century mystic Julian of Norwich, all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well. There will be no more death, or sorrow, or pain, and there will be no more poverty, or homelessness, or exploitation, or abuse, and there will be no more microaggressions, or racism, or white supremacy, and there will be no more weapons of any kind of destruction. And no more billionaires while millions go hungry. For the old order of things will pass away. That is the word of the Lord. And the psalmist says, in his word I put my hope. In his word I put my hope. To hope in God's word is to put our trust in what God says. To trust that God will do what God says he will do. But putting our trust in what God says also means that we trust when God has already told us to do something, God means that too. There's a few things that God's already told us. Love the Lord your God, all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Love your enemies. And pray for those who persecute you. Do justice, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. As Nara reminded us, care for the hungry, the needy, the homeless, the immigrant, the poor, the imprisoned, and the sick. So far as it depends on you, live in peace with everyone. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Do not use your freedom for yourselves alone. Rather, serve one another humbly in love. We wait and we hope.